Hey guys, what is up? It is No Help and welcome back to another video today. If you guys like the video, make sure to go ahead and smash the like button. So first of all, what I want to say in this video is I do not want summoning to come into old school RuneScape. Today is just a discussion about if it did come into the game and what it would benefit, what it would pretty much not benefit, if it would be overpowered or not. Today is just a whole discussion on summoning. Okay, so we're going to first start this off by doing a little bit of a history lesson with the summoning skill. Alright, so summoning was a skill pretty much where you went ahead and summoned creatures that you pretty much crafted, and then they could help you with random things around the game. But summoning was actually released in January 15th, 2008, so that it did not come when old school RuneScape was actually released. The good thing about summoning is that it was a skill that kind of helped the game out a lot. So pretty much you needed to do is create these things called pouches, and pouches are what you used in order to go ahead and actually summon the creatures. So it would take random items out of the game, which I will go ahead and show you later, but we actually do not have it on old school RuneScape, and it would actually be a huge update if it did ever come out. I find this very interesting as well because this is actually the old school RuneScape page, not the RuneScape 3 one, and it kind of goes over a little bit. You guys can go ahead and check this out if you want, and then repurpose summoning creatures that they've actually used into the game. So like these are kind of things that were, you know, previously for the summoning skill in like pre-EOC, but they actually ended up using them in old school. So if they ever did get added, it would need to be changed quite a bit. So here's kind of like some of the creatures that you could summon back in the day. Here was the early pack yak. We had penguins, and then you could get like random dogs. I don't think we have dogs in the game, right? You know, you can get a cat, but you used to be able to get a dog. This was actually my first ever pet right here in RuneScape, the bulldog. That's weird that it was added in 2014. For some reason, I was thinking it was a lot earlier than that, but yeah, just a cool little thing. And then there was some other things that were used, obviously, was the protections and stuff like that. And here's some of the animations as well. Okay, so here's the RuneScape 3 page. Sorry about the ads. I don't know what the hell's wrong with the RuneScape 3 page, but as you can see, it was released January 2008, obviously. And then it will say pretty much players with 99, there's 140,000. This is obviously all in the regular version of RuneScape, but there were these things called familiars. Okay, so a familiar is basically like a creature that you would summon pretty much, and I'm gonna see if it shows you all of the different ones. So there's obviously different ones. There were ones that would help you fight, there were ones that would help you increase light, skill boost, remote view, beast of burden. This was one that a lot of people actually liked because basically the beast of burden would kind of act as like a little personal bank where you could store a certain amount of items in. The very overpowered one was the pack yak, which I believe was like 96 or 97 summoning, and it pretty much held 30 items, and you could use its like little scroll that it came with, which is like an ability, and each one of these things had an ability, and it would actually send an item to the bank. So this one was like super overpowered for pretty much anything in the game, right? You could carry 30 extra pieces of food with you, whatever. It is very overpowered. Then there was ones like the healer, which basically was just kind of like soul split or something like that. Like it would just, you know, over time heal you randomly. And then there was another one that was a unicorn, which you could use its scroll to heal you, which was very overpowered. Ones that would teleport and stuff like that. There's tons and tons of random different types of familiars that we actually got onto this game. And like I said, to make the pouches, pretty much you'd have to get the ingredients in order to go make the familiar, which was usually a secondary ingredient similar to like herblore. Then you need an empty pouch and then spirit shards, which you could go ahead and buy from the summoning master, and also this thing called a charm. Now charms were just dropped by pretty much every single thing in the game. You know how we get like bones from pretty much everything in the game. Charms would have a chance of dropping from almost everything in the game. Now there were obviously better ways to get charms if you killed certain creatures. I think it was water fiends back in the day were really good for crimson and blue charms, but you would need the 4 ingredients to go ahead and create a pouch, and then you could actually turn a pouch into summoning scrolls. I think you would get 10 scrolls for every 1 pouch you pretty much did, but this was not worth it for the experience, obviously. And then summoning came with other things too, where you can go ahead and and get random pets. We don't really need that in old school RuneScape. We have tons of pets already. I guess there was an XP outfit as well and all this random stuff. So here is actually the types of charms that came with summoning. So there were gold charms, which were used for pretty much low level things. And then there were green charms, which as you can see here, it would show the summoning requirement to go ahead and use them. Green charms, and then crimson and blue charms. Now the crimson and the blue charms were obviously the ones that gave you the most experience of all. Then there was other charms that were like quest kind of things, or for very specific familiars that you didn't really collect all that much. And yeah, this is just going to go over pretty much everything that summoning went ahead and did when you got the skill cape and blah blah blah. And then here's all the updates and like the patches that they went ahead and did throughout all of the years. So maybe from an outside perspective, summoning looks like a really cool skill in the game. And don't get me wrong, it was back in 2008, 2009, 2010. I do think that the way old school RuneScape is designed today and the way that we actually play the game today, I don't personally think it would fit. First of all, this game has been out for a decade now, right? Most of the players that are the high level community anyways have already trained to 99 slay or in their high levels of combat anyways, and summoning is one of those skills that you kind of need to go ahead and start at a lower level. You don't need to, but if you start at level 1 Slayer and then go all the way to 99, you will collect tons of charms in order to go ahead and train your summoning. Now, people that already have 99 Slayer in maxed combat would probably be a little upset because then they'd have to go ahead, do Slayer again, do combat again in order to go ahead and get those charms. That's not the only issue though. It would be extremely overpowered. Not to say that it wasn't overpowered back then, because it definitely was, but we also had other things in the game back then. We had like ancient curses, we had, not in 2008, I guess, but after, I guess, the summoning update, we just kept getting more and more overpowered updates, so summoning didn't seem as crazy. But then on the other hand, in old school RuneScape, we have things like the scythe, we have things like the blowpipe, the twisted bow, just extremely overpowered things anyways. And just picture this, if we, had summoning in old school RuneScape, even from a very low level, I think it was like 60 something, you could get this thing called the War Tortoise, and I believe it held 18, 20 something extra items for you, so low to mid-level players could, go to God War's dungeon and just stay forever. And I don't even know how this would affect something like raids. I'm not sure with raids if you'd be able to bring summoning pouches in, or how that would even work, or even think about something like as simple as PvP. People back in the day would use the Steel Titan familiar, which pretty much would just send a huge attack on somebody, right? So imagine rushing, you rush somebody with Dragon Claws and then you send a Steel Titan after them. Like, they do not have a chance at surviving. Overall, what I'm pretty much saying about summoning is if they ever did implement it into old school RuneScape, they would have a lot of work to go ahead and do. Not that they didn't have a lot of work back in 2008, but they would have a lot of work to do, and it would have to obviously pass a poll, which I'm pretty much 100% that it would not pass a poll. I'm going to talk about things that were great with summoning now, because I don't want this to just be like, I'm totally against summoning. Now, I personally do not want it into old school RuneScape, but I'm going to talk about some of the benefits or things that I liked about it back in 2008. So obviously it just made things a lot easier, especially for me being a lower level back in like 2008, 2009, I guess 2009, 2010, stuff like that. It just made things extremely easier. There was this one familiar that I remember being the Terror Bird. Now it's like those birds that are always around the elves and the gnomes and all that stuff, but you could pretty much have this bird and it would just supply you unlimited pretty much run energy, because its scroll would allow you to just pretty much drink like an energy potion, and this was a very efficient way back then to get energy back up. We didn't have things like stamina potions or graceful armor, right? But later on, I guess RuneScape added those people that you could go ahead and listen to music and it would just fully recharge your energy. But for on the go or for questing, the Terror Bird was awesome. It also held like an additional 12 items. And that was only unlocked at like a very low summoning level, like 50, I think. Also, back in the day, there was a lot of money makers with summoning because you could get certain familiars that would spawn items. I remember there was one that kept spawning red spider's eggs, and this is how I made a ton of money back in the day at a lower level, right? Because you could buy these summoning familiars for, a couple K off the grand exchange, buy like 1,000 of their scrolls, and then just keep casting their special attack, and it would spawn red spider's eggs. So this was a really good way back in the day to make a ton of profit. Imagine this on an Ironman account today, how overpowered that would be. It would take a lot of the secondary ingredient collecting. I wouldn't take it out of the game, right? But back then you had to wait for you'd have another little icon up here, and you'd have to wait for your summoning energy to go ahead and restore again, right? But imagine in today's RuneScape, right? You go ahead and spam the ability 3-4 times, then you just drink your stamina or rejuvenation pool from your player own house, and you could just keep spamming again. It would just be broken. I also really did like when I eventually got to the higher level summoning, and I did end up getting a pack yak. This made trips at bosses or trips at something like frost dragons back in the day extremely profitable, right? Imagine you could just take your entire inventory of food, and then you'd have an entire pretty much other inventory or more. You had like 30 items or 36, I don't remember exactly how much it was, that you could just store in this pack yak, right? And that was it. You just put all your loot in the pack yak, and other loot you could also just send to the bank with the pack yak. It was super overpowered, and if you went to go ahead and do things like bandos back in the day, I remember just taking the pack yak and just being able to stay there forever because I could carry an extra 30 Ceradome and brews in the pack yak, and then all the drops I would get, I would just send them right to the bank. Stupidly overpowered. And as I was talking about before, we already have tons of pets on old school RuneScape, but you unlocked these cool pets, I guess, when you did summoning back in the day. I remember just getting like a dog, being super excited about that, and then I think it was 99 summoning, you could get a pet dragon, and you could have a dragon following you around. Imagine how laggy the game was back then, and it was. We didn't even have good computers back then, 2008, 2009. It was just lag fest everywhere. People were just having their pets everywhere, like huge pets too, right? And don't even get me started about the Solomon's General Store later. Other uses that I remember using for summoning back in the day was the bunyip pouch. The bunyip was just something that followed you around and just pretty much passively healed you. So I remember loving this at like something like Pyramid Plunder, where you would occasionally take damage. It might even help in something like the Sepulcher today, or I'm trying to think of places where you just take even Desert Heat, for example, right? You could just have this bunyip with you, and he would constantly heal you all the time, right? So you really wouldn't have to take food in situations. Even if you had a really low level Slayer task like Blood Vilds or something that would, sometimes hit you, sometimes not, you could just take this bunyip pouch with you and you would passively heal all the time. That is very, very overpowered, right? You don't have to ever bank for food. You didn't even really need prayer potions back then, because when you got 88 summoning, you got the unicorn that would just pretty much every time you used the special attack with summoning, you would just eat a shark. That's how overpowered it was. So you could just take basically stackable food with you all of the time, right? And whenever you needed health, you wouldn't even need to take prayer potions, as I was saying. You would just pop this little ability and boom, full health again. And another thing that I just thought of now is back in the day, you could take it into the fire cape or the fight caves and have an extra 30 pieces of food. Imagine how broken that would be for something like the Inferno. I mean, it would obviously help like newer players with the Inferno, because they'd have like a ton of storage or whatever to be able to store Sarah brews and sharks and whatever they need, purple sweets. But I just think it would be incredibly broken and overpowered with how old school RuneScape is actually played today. Overall, I do not hate summoning. I just do not personally think it would fit into old school RuneScape, and if it did somehow pass a poll and somehow eventually get into the game today, there would need to be a lot of work, like a ton of work, to make it fit into old school RuneScape without it being broken. I mean, they could always like limit the uses of it, maybe not allow it in PvP, maybe not allow it in raids or something like the Inferno. But then again, like, what's the point in having a skill where pretty much in the best scenarios that you'd ever want to use it in, you couldn't, right? I don't know, that's just how I personally think about it. And then they would also need to find a way of getting something like the Charming Imp into the game, which was a reward from Dungeoneering back in the day as well, that auto-collected charms for you. It was so annoying. Imagine every time you do a Slayer task, right? You have to pick up each individual bone, right? That's what it was for summoning back in the day. You had to pick up all of the individual charms that the creatures dropped until you had this reward from Dungeoneering called the Charming Imp that went in your pocket slot, which we do not even have on this. It was a slot that was like right here. You'd have a pocket slot that you could go ahead and put this Charming Imp in, and he would auto collect the charms as they dropped. I think we would need something like that into old school RuneScape as well. One more benefit to summoning, though, it was a great gold sink to the game because you need these spirit shards to actually go ahead and create familiars as well, and they cost, I think it was like 25 GP per shard, and some creatures took like 140 shards to go ahead and create, so that would be a massive gold sink into the game as well. But yeah, I don't think summoning will ever come into old school RuneScape, and I personally do not think it will fit. But of course, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of summoning, if you would ever want it to be into old school RuneScape or even be pulled just to see how funny the numbers would be. Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you did play back in the day, what was your favorite familiar that you used in summoning, or if you even have any memories of summoning at all. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I will catch you in the next one where we're going to be talking about Dungeoneering. See ya later.